This is Jim Cason with Riverbend Fellowship in Riverbend, North Carolina. We're continuing the series, The Things Which Were, The Things Which Are, and The Things to Come. Our 20th session of this, and we're in the book of Daniel. I'm going back to chapter 7 again and go into a bit more detail than last week and continue a little further than last week. And I'm going to be reading from the Amplified Bible this time and also from notes from the New Scofield Study Bible. In the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, and visions appeared on his mind as he lay on his bed. Then he wrote the dream down and related a summary of it. Now this would have been about 553 BC. Daniel said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, the nations. The sea in Scripture stands for the populace, unorganized mass of mankind, and you also find sections on that in Revelation chapter 13, as well as Matthew 13 and Luke 21. Verse 3, four great beasts, each different from the other, were coming up out of the sea in succession. The first, which was the Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar, was like a lion and had the wings of an eagle. I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a human mind was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second one, which was the Medo-Persian Empire, was like a bear, and it was raised up on one side, the domain, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth, and it was told, arise, devour much meat. After this I kept looking, and behold, another one. This was the Greek Empire of Alexander the Great, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings like those of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, Alexander's generals and successors, and power to rule was given to it. Now, it's a big difference between this and the monarchy vision of Nebuchadnezzar that we saw in chapter 2. Nebuchadnezzar saw this great statue and the head of gold, and then silver, and then bronze, and then iron, and then a mixture of clay and iron. But the thing is, Nebuchadnezzar was looking at it from the viewpoint of man. Daniel is looking at it from the viewpoint of God. Beast. Not imposing outward power and splendor, but the true character of Gentile world government, rapacious, warlike, established and maintained by force. It's remarkable, the heraldic insignia of the Gentile nations are all beasts or birds of prey. That continues on to this day. You know, the United States symbol is an eagle. There is no eagle in the book of Revelation, by the way. Let's continue on. Right after the Greek Empire, verse 7, I kept looking after this in the night visions, and behold, I saw a 4th beast. This was the Roman Empire. Terrible and extremely strong, and it had huge iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that came before it, and it had 10 horns. Now, a horn in Scripture is used figuratively as a ruler or strength in general, political and military power, and primarily arrogant pride. Remember what the sin of Satan was? Pride. I will be like the Most High. And that's the great sin with mankind, is pride. While I was considering the horns, verse 8, behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, and 3 of the first horns were pulled up by the roots before it, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth boasting of great things. Ah, yes. This is the vision of the end of the Gentile world. The former Roman Empire will have 10 kings, corresponding to the 10 toes of the image. As Daniel considers this version, there rises up among them another king that subdues 3 of them, so completely that the separate identity of their kings is destroyed. 7 of the 10 are left, and the little horn, who is the prince that shall come, of chapter 9, verse 26, or the abomination of chapter 12, verse 11, and Matthew 24:15, and the beast out of the sea of Revelation 13, verses 1 through 10. This will be the head of the restored fourth world empire, the beast. This will be an empire in the same general character as the Roman Empire. It has not happened yet. These others have happened. It is my personal belief that this one is well underway and has become even more so in our own country in very recent days. But we have to remember, right now we're looking at what happens on man's side. Evil. And evil unleashed like it's never been unleashed before. I mean, after all, God says that power will be given to the beast for a certain amount of time. But there's always that nice scriptural but. Verse 9 starts off with God up on the throne. I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His garment was white as snow, the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was flames of fire, and its wheels were a burning fire. This title refers to God the Father, but it also equally could apply to Christ, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and the ruler down through eternity when the Father passes it on to him. Verse 10, a river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. 1,000 thousands were attending him, and 10,000 times 10,000 were standing before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. Oh my, that's going to be a day. That's going to be a day of sorrow for the world, a day of great gladness for the believers. Verse 11, I kept looking because of the sound of the great and boastful words which the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and given to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beast, their power was taken away, but yet their lives were prolonged for a predetermined time. Okay, now this is a view of the Father. But we're going to continue on, and we're going to see the Son presented to the Father. I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, on the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. And he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him, and this is speaking of Jesus, our Messiah, was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the people, the nations, and the speakers of every language should serve and worship him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. This scene right here you will also find portrayed in Revelation 5, verses 6 through 10. There it's talking about kings and priests. And it ends with the words, we shall reign on the earth. This vision describes the scenes in heaven. In the fulfillment, this really precedes the events which Daniel sees in the vision in chapter 9 through 12. But what happened with Daniel? He sees this, he doesn't understand it really. So let's go on with verse 15. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed and anxious within me, and the visions in my mind kept alarming me. I approached one of those who stood by and began asking him the exact meaning of all this. So he told me and explained to me the interpretation of the things. Verse 17. These 4 great beasts are 4 kings who will arise from the earth. But the saints of the Most High will receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever for all ages to come. And then I wanted to know the exact meaning of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others. Extremely dreadful, with teeth of iron and claws of bronze, which devoured, crushed, and trampled down what was left with its feet. Rome, in its first empire, was known for the Pax Romana, which meant there was peace in all the lands. But that peace was maintained like peace normally has to be maintained with humans, because we're fallible and we're evil. The peace was maintained by great force. You stopped revolution by killing those that were revolting. You stomped down any opposition, trampled it down. We're seeing this right now in our days. The cancel culture is an example of that. We don't like what you have to say. You don't have any right to say that. Never mind the First Amendment. There is no freedom of speech coming. That will be taken away. If you say something we don't like, we will make our best efforts to destroy you. Now that is where you're seeing the revival beginning of the ancient Roman Empire and continuing on its way. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. Verse 20. The meaning of the 10 horns that were on his head and the other horn which came up later, and before which 3 of the horns fell, specifically that horn which had eyes and a mouth that boasted great things and which looked larger than the others. As I kept looking, that horn was making war with the saints and overpowering them. Oh my. Yes, that's going to happen. The saints of God will be overpowered for a certain amount of time. We know this when we get into the book of Revelation and go through that, which, God willing, if Jesus doesn't come first, we will eventually get to. But here's another one of those scriptural buts, verse 22. Until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was passed in favor of the saints of the Most High. And the time came when the saints took possession of the kingdom. Now we come to the explanation. Thus the angel said, remember, an angel is a messenger from God. The 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom on earth, which will be different from all other kingdoms, and devour the whole earth and tread it down and crush it. Now ancient Rome did destroy the Western world as it was at that time. It did not destroy the Far East. That was never a part of it. It did not destroy whoever was living in North America and South America, or Australia, or Antarctica, if anybody was back then. So it was not worldwide. It did not devour the whole earth. But this reincarnation, as it were, of the ancient Roman kingdom will do that. As for the 10 horns, out of his kingdom 10 horns arise, another arrives. He subdues 3. Verse 25, he will speak words against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Most High. And he will intend to change the times and the law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, 2 times, and half a time. Wears down the saints of the Most High. We believers are saints of the Most High. I am a pre-tribulation rapture, or at least mid-tribulation rapture believer, and I believe that we will already be raptured by that time. The church will be. But if you remember, there's going to be 12,000 Jewish evangelists speaking to God's people. There will be saints of the Most High during this time of great persecution. This earthly ungodly ruler will wear down the saints. What he wants to do is to change the times and the law. He really basically wants the law to say that you will worship him instead of worshiping the Most High God. And God's going to turn him loose for a little while. Let him be unleashed a little bit. A time, 2 times, and half a time. That's 3.5 years. The second half of the Great Tribulation. Verse 26. But the court of the Most High will sit in judgment, and his, speaking of the beast, dominion will be taken away, first to be consumed gradually, and then to be destroyed forever. Then The kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all the dominions will serve and obey him. So this is speaking of the earth, the first heaven, the atmosphere around the earth, the second heaven, all that there is of space. The universe, the part that it would be possible for us to travel to if we had long enough to do it. And the third heaven. Everything in creation will be under Christ and under his saints who will take charge of various areas of it. Everything is given to him. Verse 28, this is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my waking thoughts were extremely troubling and alarming, and my face grew pale. But I kept the matter of the vision and the angel's explanation to myself. Now, this was done for a specific reason. He kept it to himself because it was not yet time for him to reveal it. Obviously, he revealed it in this chapter of the book of Daniel. This prediction has been remarkably precise as you go down through history. There is no reason whatsoever to believe that the rest of it will not be. Now, God willing, we'll be continuing in Daniel a week from now. And prayer-wise, folks, this nation needs prayer like we've never needed it before. All hell and fury is going to be unleashed on this earth, and this nation included. I don't know how quickly, how gradually, but I do know it's going to happen. What can we do about it? We can do what the Scripture commands. We can pray before God. We can kneel down and admit our own sin and our own guilt and our own problems, because judgment begins at the house of God. And we can pray for his mercy during the time. But it must come to pass. He has said it will come to pass, and it will. But you know what? Lift up your head, your redemption draws nigh. When the end gets here, there is no end. I don't know what the eternal state will be. I personally don't think there's going to be any clocks. You don't need a heavenly clock if you don't really have time anymore, right? And if time never ends, you might as well not have it. But be thankful. Be praising God all the way through this. Be praying. Our local congregation, some people in it need prayer too. There's people going through sickness. There's people going through trying to recover from cancer and other things. And there's people really that are not really active. They're sitting in the pew, as it were, or sitting in the chair at home, instead of out doing God's work in the kingdom. Get out and do that work, because the Scripture says the night shall come where no man can work. You have a blessed day and a blessed week. God be with you.